"You call this clean?" Sloane Caldwell's shrill scream shattered the foyer of the mansion like breaking glass. There was no good morning, no warning, just the sound of her voice and, right after, the dry and humiliating noise of the tip of a luxury stiletto kicking the metal bucket. Clang! The dirty grey water full of chemical foam flew through the air. Willa had no time to dodge. The filthy liquid hit her chest, soaking her uniform, and spread across the imported marble floor she had been polishing on her knees for 2 hours. The heat of that Tuesday was unbearable. It hadn't rained in weeks, and the air inside the house, even with the air conditioning, felt heavy, suffocating. Willa felt the cold, dirty water running down her belly, mixing with the sweat of exhaustion that already covered her body. She lifted her head, her heart racing in her throat. Sloane was standing there, a tower of arrogance dressed in champagne silk, holding a golden vape like it was a scepter. She didn't look at Willa as if she were a human. She looked at her as if she had found a cockroach on the Persian rug. "I asked a question, girl." Sloane stepped forward, invading Willa's personal space, who was still on her knees. "I pay a fortune for this agency to send me someone competent, and they send me a blind slug. Look at this stain here." Sloane pointed to a non-existent spot on the floor, now covered by the dirty water she had spilled herself. "Mrs. Lorraine, I was already done. The floor was clean. You flew off the handle." Willa tried to argue, her voice faltering from the shock. "What?" Sloane let out an incredulous, venomous laugh. "Are you accusing me? I tripped over your mess. You leave that bucket in the middle of the way, trying to kill the mistress, and you still have the audacity to blame me?" Willa bit her lip, feeling the metallic taste of anger and helplessness. She needed that job. The rent was 2 months overdue. The discount pharmacy no longer sold the asthma inhaler on credit. If she lost that paycheck, she would be on the street. Simple as that. Pride had to be swallowed like a bitter pill, scratching her throat. "I'm sorry, Mom. It was an accident. I'll clean it up right now." "You will clean it up, and you will lick that floor if you need to, until I see my reflection in it. And if I see one more stain, or if you take 5 more minutes, I will deduct it from your salary." Sloane shook the hand holding an imported cookie, deliberately letting fine crumbs fall on the puddle of dirty water. "Oops, clean that up too." Willa lowered her head, the tears of humiliation burning her eyes, and began to wipe the floor frantically, mixing the crumbs with the dirty water. Her knees, already like an open wound from the constant friction, screamed in pain. It was in this chaos, with Willa humiliated on the floor and Sloane triumphant standing, that the front door opened. The electronic click of the lock was the only warning. Graham entered. The contrast was brutal. While the foyer smelled of tension and cleaning product, Graham brought the scent of the street, of exhaustion and an endless workday. He loosened his tie as soon as he passed through the door, his eyes sunken from not sleeping well for months. Sloane's transformation was instantaneous, almost frightening. The rigid posture of an executioner melted into a gentle curve of a devoted wife. The twisted face of disgust lit up with an angelic smile. "Love!" She ran to him, delicately hopping to avoid stepping in the dirty water. "You arrived early. What a wonderful surprise." She hugged him around the neck, kissing him with theatrical possession. Graham returned the embrace mechanically, but his tired, watchful eyes swept the room and stopped at the scene on the floor. He saw the water spread out. He saw the crumbs, and he saw Willa, soaked, trembling, scrubbing the floor with a desperation that was not normal. "What happened here?" His voice was deep, hoarse. "Why is the entrance flooded?" Willa's heart stopped. This was the opening. He had asked. Graham did not seem to be like Sloane. He always said good morning, always asked if she had eaten lunch, if she spoke. If she said, she flew off the handle and threw food at me. But before Willa could catch her breath, Sloane's hand caressed Graham's chest, drawing his attention. "Oh, darling, Don't stress about it. It was just a little household accident. Willa, poor thing, she's a bit clumsy, you know? She tripped over her own feet, knocked over the bucket, made this mess. But I already told her. Willa, take it easy, it happens. I was here calming her down, poor girl. She got so nervous she started shaking. Sloane looked at Willa over Graham's shoulder. The smile was sweet, but her eyes were icy daggers. The message was clear. Deny me and you die. Willa felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. She looked at Graham. He was staring at her, waiting for a confirmation. There was doubt in his gaze. He knew Sloane was exaggerating, but did he know she was cruel? Is it true, Willa? He asked softly. Willa closed her eyes for a millisecond. She saw the face of the landlord demanding the rent. Yes, Mr. Graham. The lie came out with a taste of ashes. I am clumsy. I slipped. I'm sorry for the mess. It will be clean soon. Graham sighed, running his hand over his face. The tension left his shoulders. He chose to believe the easy lie rather than deal with the difficult truth. It's okay. Be careful not to hurt yourself, Willa. That floor is dangerous when wet. Come on, darling, let her clean. I had them prepare that wine you like. Sloane pulled him by the hand, guiding him to the stairs, away from the mess. As they went up, Willa heard Sloane's whisper loud and clear. It's so hard to find good people these days, right? We give them a chance, and they only bring trouble. Willa stood there, alone in the stuffy foyer. The heat seemed to have increased. She didn't cry. Anger dried her tears. She twisted the cloth so hard that the knuckles of her fingers turned white. She was going to clean that floor, but that stain on her soul, that humiliation, she wasn't going to forget. An hour later, the mansion was immersed in tense silence. The sun had already set, but the humidity lingered. In the service area, the ceiling fan spun lazily, unable to overcome the heat. Willa was putting away the cleaning supplies in the cabinet, her hands still smelling of bleach, even after washing them 3 times. Mrs. Lorraine, the housekeeper, was sitting at the table, polishing the dinner silverware with repetitive and hypnotic movements. Lorraine was a woman who seemed to have shrunk over time. Curved shoulders, low voice, eyes that never looked anyone straight in the face. She knew everything, saw everything, and said nothing. That was how she had survived for 20 years in that house. She is a monster, Mrs. Lorraine. Willa let the phrase hang in the air, not looking back. Lorraine stopped polishing a silver fork. The silence in the kitchen grew thicker. Speak softly, girl. The walls have ears. And the baby monitor in the nursery that she says will be there one day. Sometimes she leaves it on in the living room, just to hear us. Willa turned, incredulous. Did you see what she did? She flew off the handle at me. She threw cookies on the floor as if I were a pigeon. And then she lied to Mr. Graham with that fake smile. How do you stand it? Mrs. Lorraine sighed, a deep sound that seemed to come from her soul. I endure it because I have a son in college, Willa. And Mr. Graham pays the tuition. He is a good man surrounded by bad circumstances. Bad circumstances. She is the devil. Enough. Mrs. Lorraine slammed the fork on the table, a sharp metallic sound. Get with the program or get out. But if you want to stay, learn rule number 1. Make yourself scarce. Mrs. Lorraine stood up and walked over to Willa, holding her by the shoulders firmly. And speaking of rules, I need to remind you of the most important one. The one that could cost you much more than your job. Mrs. Lorraine pointed to the end of the staff corridor. There, where the light from the corridor didn't reach properly, was a heavy, dark oak door, the entrance to the east wing. You never, under any circumstances, go into that corridor. The corridor of his father, the so-called Mr. Harrison? Willa asked. Exactly. Mrs. Lorraine, I don't understand. The mansion is huge. Why is he locked up there? I've never seen his face. They say he's crazy, but it's not they say. He is. Mrs. Lorraine lowered her voice to a terrified whisper. Alzheimer's has eaten his brain, Willa. But what's left isn't a child. It's a beast. Mrs. Sloane said that the last time they tried to take him out of the bedroom, he bit the nurse until she bled. He screams. He's violent. That's why he's locked up. It's maximum security. Willa looked at the dark door. The description didn't match the feeling she had. Sometimes when she passed by while cleaning the baseboards, she felt a shiver, not out of fear, but out of sadness. And who takes care of him? A specialized team. They come in through the back in the early morning. We don't even see them. It's all very discreet, so as not to embarrass Mr. Graham. He suffers a lot from this, poor thing. He thinks his father has turned into a monster. And has he? Willa insisted. Mrs. Lorraine hesitated. For a second, the mask of the perfect housekeeper fell. I haven't seen Mr. Harrison in 3 years, Willa, since Mrs. Sloane took over the management of the house and the nurses. I only know what she says, and what she says is, stay away, or he will kill you. Willa felt a chill in her stomach that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. There was something very wrong with that story. Now go. Dinner will be served. And Willa, Mrs. Lorraine held her arm. Be careful. Sloane is bored today, and when she is bored, she likes to hunt. The dining room was cold. The air conditioning was at maximum, creating an artificial European winter atmosphere to justify the heavy red wines that Sloane liked to open. The table was a spectacle of ostentation. Silver candlesticks, Egyptian linen tablecloth, and food. Lots of food. Willa served in silence, moving like a ghost around the table. The main dish was herb-crusted lamb with truffled mashed potatoes. The smell was divine, contrasting with the hunger gnawing at Willa's stomach, which had only eaten an apple all day. Graham ate little, chewing slowly, his gaze distant, lost in worries. Sloane, on the other hand, played with her food. This meat is dry. She dropped the fork onto the plate with a clatter. Graham raised his eyes, tired. Sloane, this is the 3rd time you've complained about this week. The meat is great. For your rustic palate, maybe. For me, it's burnt. She pushed the full plate away. She had eaten maybe 30 grams of meat. Willa! Willa emerged from the shadows immediately. Yes, ma'am. You can take it away. This is garbage. Tell the to make an omelette with egg whites and brie cheese, and throw this out. Willa looked at the plate. There was almost a kilogram of fine meat on it. Excuse me. She took the plate away. As she walked to the kitchen, she felt Graham's gaze on her. He seemed embarrassed by his fiancée's behavior, but said nothing. His silence was complicit. In the kitchen, the scene repeated itself like a macabre ritual. Willa stopped in front of the staff trash bins. Do I really have to throw it away, Mrs. Lorraine? It's a sin. So many people are starving. Throw it away, Willa. Lorraine didn't even look. If she finds a lamb bone in the staff trash, she'll fire everyone for theft. She checks. She's sick. Willa closed her eyes and turned the plate. The meat fell into the trash, mixing with eggshells and coffee grounds. The dull thud of food being wasted hurt more than flying off the handle. And what about Mr. Harrison? Willa asked, seeing Mrs. Lorraine prepare a tray in the corner. The contrast was heartbreaking. On the grey plastic tray there was a bowl with a thin, yellowish broth, where sad pieces of chayote floated, and a piece of bread that looked like it had been cut yesterday. Is this his dinner? Willa whispered, shocked. Light and restrictive diet, that's what the order posted on the refrigerator says. Mrs. Lorraine replied, her voice heavy with bitterness. Mrs. Sloane says protein makes him agitated. That seasoning is bad for him. This is dirty water, Mrs. Lorraine. He is a man, not a plant. He is starving with this. Take the tray, Willa. Mrs. Lorraine turned her back, not wanting to discuss the undisputable. Leave it on the hallway table. The nurse will take it. Willa picked up the tray. Her hands trembled with indignation. She crossed the kitchen, passed through the staff corridor, and reached the forbidden door of the east wing. The house was in absolute silence. There were no nurses. There was no movement. Willa placed the tray on the hallway table. She looked at the locked door. Then she heard it. It wasn't a madman's scream. It wasn't a roar. It was a low, rhythmic sound. The sound of someone lightly banging their head or hand against the wall in a self-soothing rhythm, and a hoarse, dry whisper, "Bread, please, bread." The voice was human, fragile, desperate. Willa froze. The monster was asking for bread. The next day dawned stuffy, the sky white with heat. The tension in the house was palpable. Sloane had gone to the country club, Graham to the company. The house was empty. Willa was cleaning the corridor near the east wing. The tray from the previous night had disappeared, but the bowl was back, empty, licked clean to the last drop. Crash! The sound of breaking glass came from inside the locked bedroom, loud, violent. Willa dropped the broom. Her heart raced. Ouch! A groan of pain. Blood! So much blood! She didn't think about the rules. She didn't think about getting fired. She thought about her father. She thought about humanity. Willa ran to the door, locked. She looked around, frantic. Her eyes landed on the top of the door frame. A thick layer of dust covered the wood, except for a spot where something glimmered faintly. She stretched her arm, stood on her tiptoes. Her fingers touched cold metal. A key, hidden in the most obvious place, covered in dust. What kind of maximum security was that? It was negligence. It was abandonment. Willa took the key, shoved it into the lock, turned. The door opened with a creak of dry hinges. The smell hit her like a physical punch. A dense, warm odor of old urine, sweat, and a closed space. The windows were boarded up with planks and duct tape, blocking any sunlight. In the dim light, Willa Hayes saw the scene that would change her life. There was no furniture, just a rusty hospital bed, and on the floor, curled up among the shards of a broken glass, was a man, skeletal. His ribs marked under translucent skin, long, tangled white hair covering his face. He wore only a loose, dirty adult diaper. He was trying to lick a puddle of water on the floor, mixed with the blood from his own hand, cut by the shards. "Don't hit!" He whined upon seeing the light from the corridor enter. He covered his head with arms as thin as twigs. "I didn't mean any harm. I was thirsty. Don't hit, witch." Willa felt her legs weaken. The image of that man, the father of the owner of that millionaire mansion reduced to a frightened animal, broke something inside her. Willa entered the bedroom and closed the door behind her, leaving only a crack of light. "I won't hit." Her voice came out choked. "I am Willa." She knelt on the filthy floor, ignoring the smell, ignoring the danger. The old man pushed the hair from his face. His blue eyes, identical to Graham's, were wide with fear, but there was a spark of intelligence there. "Water?" he asked. Willa ran to the ensuite bathroom. It was dry, without towels, without soap. She filled a plastic cup at the faucet and returned. He drank as if it were salvation. He choked, coughed, drank more. When he finished, he looked at the pocket of Willa's apron. Smell. Food. Willa remembered. She had saved the boiled egg and half of the bread from her lunch to eat later. She didn't hesitate. She took the aluminum foil wrap from her pocket. "It's little, Mr. Harrison, but it's yours." She put the egg in his mouth. He ate with a voracity that made Willa cry silently. He didn't chew. He swallowed. The hunger was old, deep. The witch doesn't give food, only dirty water, he whispered between bites. "She says I'm bad, that Graham hates me." "Graham doesn't know, Mr. Harrison." Willa wiped the blood from his hand with a paper towel she took from her pocket. "I'm sure he doesn't know." "He knows. He never comes. Because she won't let him." Suddenly the sound of a car screeching into the garage echoed far away. The old man froze. Absolute terror took over his face. She's back. She smells it. Hide! Willa quickly gathered the shards of glass, wrapping them in the bundle of paper towels to avoid making noise and stuffing them deep into her apron pocket. I need to go. If she sees me here, I can't help you anymore. Will you come back? He grabbed her wrist with his bloodied hand. Promise. Willa looked at that broken man. She could leave, lock the door, walk away, and never come back. She could pretend she didn't see. It was the safest thing to do, but she looked into his eyes. I'll be back. Tomorrow. With real food. She helped him lie down on the bed, covering him with the filthy sheet. She left the bedroom, locked the door, returned the key to the top of the dusty doorframe. Willa! Sloane Caldwell's scream came from the living room. Willa ran to the nearest staff bathroom, entered, and turned the faucet on full blast, plunging her trembling hands into the water to wash away the old man's blood and the sweat of her own fear. Willa, where are you, you useless? Willa took a deep breath, looked at herself in the mirror. Her eyes were no longer the same. Fear had turned into fuel. I'm here, she shouted back, her voice steady. In the bathroom. The war had begun. The following days dragged on like a dense fog of tension and secrecy. The mansion, once just an oppressive workplace, transformed into a minefield where one misstep meant explosion. For Willa, every movement in the polished corridor was calculated, every breath was measured. She now lived a dizzying double life. In the eyes of Sloane and Mrs. Lorraine, she was the submissive maid, silently cleaning baseboards. But in the shadows, she was the only lifeline of a man forgotten in the dark. The Guardian Angel operation, as Willa named it in her thoughts to keep her courage in the face of fear, began with small thefts of dignity. It was not theft of goods, but of leftovers. On Wednesday, the staff lunch was chopped meat with potatoes. Willa ate only the potatoes. She wrapped the meat in a paper napkin, wrapping it up as if it were a jewel, and hid it at the bottom of her apron pocket. She worked hungrily until 3 in the afternoon, feeling her stomach growl every time she bent down to wring out the mop. But the riskiest moment was on Thursday. The employer's dinner had been mushroom risotto with truffle oil. The pots returned to the kitchen sink, encrusted with the leftover creamy rice that stuck to the bottom. Mrs. Lorraine was on the phone in the pantry. Willa, instead of immediately pouring water and detergent, grabbed a spoon and frantically scraped the bottom of the pot. That slightly burnt rice, mixed with the expensive oil that Sloane despised, went straight into Willa's plastic lunch container. It wasn't theft, it was trash, but for Mr. Harrison, it would be a feast. When the house finally fell silent and Willa was able to use the dusty key to enter the east wing, the smell of mold was briefly replaced by the aroma of truffle oil emanating from her jar. Mr. Harrison was sitting on the bed, waiting. He no longer shrank back as much when the door opened. Upon seeing Willa, his cloudy blue eyes shone like beacons in the fog. "You came," he whispered, his voice still weak, but without the tremor of absolute terror he had on the first day. Willa fed him. With each spoonful of that scraped rice from the pot, she saw color slowly return to his cheeks. "It's fit for a king," he murmured, closing his eyes as he tasted it. "Graham liked this. Mushroom. Yes, Mr. Harrison, it's the king's dinner." But food was not enough. The smell in the room was unbearable, acrid. "Let's clean this up, Mr. Harrison. Today we're going to give you a lick and a promise. The witch won't smell it, I promise." Willa brought a basin with warm water and a neutral glycerin soap that she had bought with her own money at a discount pharmacy. She couldn't use the imported soaps from the mansion. Sloane would notice the disappearance of any luxury item, and the strong scent of French perfume would give everything away. It was a slow, embarrassing and painful process. His body was covered in bed sores and old wounds from lying in the same position. Willa cleaned each one with the delicacy of someone handling a broken sacred relic. As she wiped the warm cloth over his thin arms, Mr. Harrison began to cry, not from pain, but from a deep relief. "My mother. She used to do this when I fell off my bike," he mumbled, his mind traveling back in time. "Eleanor. Her name was Eleanor. She sang to me, and to Graham. Graham liked airplanes. Vroom, vroom." Willa stopped, the cloth suspended in the air. It was the first time he spoke of his son without fear, without associating him with the witch. The memory was returning, fragmented, like a puzzle being pieced together piece by piece. "Graham still likes airplanes, Mr. Harrison. He travels a lot for work. He really flies in the sky." The old man furrowed his brow, confused and worried. "He travels. But he is small. He will fall. The sky is very high." Willa smiled sadly, holding his bony hand. For that father, time had stopped in his son's childhood, before the illness, before the cruelty, before Sloane turned that house into a mausoleum. Willa realized then that she was not just keeping a body alive, she was rescuing a story. But danger lurked every second. On Friday, Mrs. Lorraine stopped Willa in the staff corridor and sniffed the air. "You are using too much disinfectant in that staff corridor of the East Wing, Willa. The smell of cleanliness is reaching the main staircase. Sloane has a bloodhound's nose, be careful. If she thinks you are wasting product in a forbidden area, she will deduct it from your salary." Willa simply nodded, her heart pounding in her throat. "It's to kill the mold that comes under the door, Mrs. Lorraine. The mold triggers my asthma. I just wiped the threshold with a cloth. The lie stuck for now." But Willa knew that luck is a finite resource. Sloane was getting restless, and a bored villain is more dangerous than a busy villain. Saturday morning, the sun streamed through the windows of the breakfast nook, illuminating a table set worthy of a magazine cover. Tropical fruits cut into geometric shapes, artisanal sourdough breads, and green detox juices that Sloane posted on Instagram but rarely drank. Willa was kneeling by the sideboard, cleaning an imaginary stain on the carpet, but her ears were tuned to the couple's conversation like a radar. Graham set down the tablet where he was reading the financial market news and looked at Sloane, who was applying an expensive cream to her hands with slow, circular motions. He seemed a bit more rested that day, perhaps because it was the weekend, or maybe because, unconsciously, he felt that the house was less heavy energetically. "Sloane, I was thinking," Graham began hesitantly. "It's been a while since I received the written report from Dr. Jennings about Dad. The nurse's invoices come through automatic debit, but I don't see any progress." Willa froze, the brush still on the carpet. Dr. Jennings was the name of the renowned doctor who supposedly oversaw the treatment. Willa knew, from having rummaged through the office trash days earlier, that there had been no recent prescription from that doctor. Sloane did not change her expression, not by a millimeter. Her coldness was professional, trained. "Ah, darling. I spoke with him just yesterday on the phone. He said that the condition is stable as it can be for a degenerative one." "Stable how? Does he still have those violent outbursts?" "Worse, unfortunately." Sloane sighed, making a theatrical sad face, shaking her head. "The nurse on duty sent me a voice message this morning, terrified. She said she tried to give him a bath and he bit her arm. She had to go to the emergency room to get stitches. The old man has incredible strength, Graham. It's the dementia. He turns into a wild animal." Willa gripped the handle of the brush so tightly that the knuckles of her fingers turned white. "It's a lie," she wanted to scream. "A dirty lie. He is a sweetheart. He sings. He cries when I pet his hair. He can barely lift a glass of water. How would he have the strength to bite someone?" Graham lowered his head, visibly shaken, pushing away his plate of food. "My God, I should go there. I can't leave him like this. Maybe if he saw me, if he heard my voice." "No!" Sloane cut in, incisive, almost shouting. Then, realizing the exaggeration, she softened her voice to a manipulative maternal tone. "Honey, don't do this to yourself. Dr. Jennings was clear. Your presence is his biggest trigger. He remembers you and gets violent because he thinks you abandoned him. If you go into that bedroom, he will attack you, or he will have a heart attack from so much stress. Do you want to kill your father from heartbreak?" The manipulation was surgical. Graham stepped back, defeated by the guilt that Sloane planted in him every day. "No, of course not. You're right. I just miss him. My real father. I know, sweetheart. But I'm taking care of everything. I protect you, and I protect him from this horrible situation. Now drink your coffee. It's going to get cold." Willa felt a bitter taste of bile in her mouth. She got up, grabbed the bucket, and left the room before she vomited in disgust in front of them. She went straight to the service area, took her broom, and, taking advantage of the fact that Mrs. Lorraine was in the garden, headed to the forbidden corridor. She pressed her ear against the oak door. Her heart was pounding. If he were screaming, if he were violent, she would hear. But inside, in the dark, there were no screams. There were no bitten nurses. There was a weak, hoarse, yet melodic voice softly humming. Rosemary, golden rosemary, that was born in the field without being sown. It was my love who told me so. Mr. Harrison was singing the song that his mother used to sing. Willa smiled, with warm tears streaming down her face. The music was the living, auditory, and undeniable proof that Sloane was a pathological liar. And Willa recorded that sound in her mind. She desperately needed Graham to hear it. But how? Graham was forbidden from getting close. Willa needed a battle plan, but before she could think of a strategy, Sloane's malice acted first. Monday began with a strange electricity in the air. Sloane did not go to the country club. She prowled around the mansion, moving from one room to another like a caged tiger, wearing a blood-red silk robe. She watched Willa clean the windows, watched Willa dust. Her gaze was not one of supervision. It was one of hunting. She was looking for a gap. "That girl is so bold," Willa heard Sloane comment to someone on the phone in a low voice while Willa was cleaning the baseboard in the living room next door. "A maid has to be invisible. She has to be afraid. That one has a sparkle in her eye that irritates me. It seems like she owns the moral high ground of the house. I will take care of this today. I have an important dinner, and I need a show." Willa didn't understand what that meant until the end of the afternoon. Graham had called to say he would arrive earlier for a business dinner with international investors at home. The activity in the kitchen was intense. Willa was helping to dry the fine crystal dishes. "Willa, go change," Mrs. Lorraine ordered nervously. "Put on the gala uniform to serve dinner, and for God's sake, tie that hair back properly. I don't want a strand in the soup." Willa went to the staff locker room, which was located in an isolated side corridor near the garage and the laundry. She was walking down the staff corridor when she heard quick footsteps coming from the opposite direction, high heels clicking on the cold floor. Sloane. Willa, by survival instinct, stopped before the curve of the corridor and peeked. Sloane was hurrying, looking back, paranoid. She was holding something shiny and heavy in her hand. A watch, the solid gold Rolex, encrusted with diamonds, that Graham only wore on special occasions and kept in the safe. Willa held her breath behind the pillar. What was the mistress doing there, in the dirty service area, with her husband's most expensive watch? Sloane stopped in front of the staff locker room door, exactly where Willa's open bag was hanging on the hook. She reached for the doorknob. The plan was obvious, to plant the watch. At that exact moment, the side door of the garage swung open with a metallic bang. It was the delivery people from the catering service, laughing and talking loudly, carrying boxes of drinks. "Hey, bring the ice over here," one of them shouted. Sloane was violently startled. She jumped and the heavy watch slipped from her hand, which was full of moisturizer as always. Clang! The Rolex hit the ceramic floor with a noise that sounded like a gunshot in that staff corridor. Sloane looked at the delivery men entering at the end of the corridor, about 10 meters away. They hadn't seen the watch yet, but they were coming in her direction. She panicked. If she bent down to pick it up, they would see her, the mistress, crouched on the service floor grabbing a piece of jewelry. If she left it there, they would see the watch. In a quick and cowardly reflex, Sloane looked to the side. There was an old wooden console table leaning against the wall with short legs. She lifted her foot and with the tip of her high heel kicked the watch under the furniture. The Rolex slid and disappeared into the shadow, resting against the wall, invisible to anyone walking by. Sloane straightened her robe, lifted her head, and when the delivery men got close, she shouted, "Be careful with those boxes. Don't scratch the wall. Where is Mrs. Lorraine?" And she walked quickly toward the kitchen, as if nothing had happened, planning to return in 5 minutes when the corridor was empty to finish the dirty work. Willa waited for Sloane to turn the corner. Her heart was beating so hard it hurt. She stepped out from behind the pillar. The delivery men passed by her, ignoring the maid. Willa knelt on the floor and reached under the old, dusty piece of furniture. Her fingers touched the cold, heavy metal. There it was, the gold Rolex, the proof of the crime. Willa understood the urgency. Sloane would be back at any moment. If Willa was caught with it in her hand, she would be accused of theft. If she left it there, Sloane would return, take it, and put it in her bag. Willa's fate was sealed if that watch stayed in that corridor. She needed to act, and it had to be the riskiest action of her life. Willa grabbed the watch and ran, not to the staff locker room, not to the kitchen. She ran to the main part of the house, climbing the staff corridor stairs 2 steps at a time. She knew that Graham had just arrived and was in the study on the ground floor, changing. Willa crossed the foyer, praying not to run into Sloane. She knocked on Graham's office door. "Come in!" His voice sounded muffled. Willa entered, breathless, sweaty, still in her cleaning uniform. Graham was buttoning his clean shirt, his bare torso, finishing getting dressed. He was startled by the abrupt entrance of the employee. "Willa, what is it? You look pale. Did something happen to Sloane?" Willa walked over to his solid mahogany desk. Her hands were shaking, but she carefully placed the watch on the work papers, right in front of him. "Mr. Graham, I'm sorry to disturb you like this. I just found this." Graham looked at the watch. He frowned, confused. He picked up the object, checking the glass. "My Rolex, but I thought it was in the safe. Sloane said she would set aside my cufflinks and the watch. Where was it?" Willa had to think fast. If she accused Sloane of trying to plant it, he wouldn't believe her. She needed to be the humble heroine, not the accuser. "I found it in the staff corridor, sir, near the entrance to the garage. I think it must have fallen when Mrs. Sloane went to receive the catering or something like that. It was on the floor, almost kicked under the furniture. I was afraid someone would step on it or it would disappear in the chaos of the delivery people." Graham looked at Willa, then at the watch worth $40,000, then back at Willa. For the first time, he saw something beyond the invisible maid. He saw raw integrity. "You found it on the floor and brought it straight to me?" "Yes, sir. My mother taught me that playing with fire will get you burned." Graham smiled, a tired but genuine smile. "Thank you, Willa. This watch was a gift from my grandfather. It means a lot to me, more than gold. Thank you for your honesty." "You're welcome, sir." "Excuse me." Willa left the study trembling like a leaf. She had disarmed the nuclear bomb, but Sloane didn't know that. Sloane would return to the staff corridor, see that the watch was gone, and panic or think that Willa had actually stolen it. The night would be long. 2 hours later, the living room was full. The 3 majority partners of Graham and their wives were drinking crystal champagne. Sloane was radiant, dressed in a long blood-red gown, holding Graham's arm like a hunting trophy. Willa, now freshly bathed and in a black formal uniform, was serving canapes, feeling Sloane's gaze burning into her back every time she passed. Sloane smiled at the guests, but her eyes, when they landed on Willa, promised pain. Sloane should have gone back to the staff corridor, not found the watch, and assumed that Willa had taken it to steal. Her plan was now perfect in her disturbed mind. Willa had the watch in her bag or on her person. The catch would be real. It was when Graham went to get more ice at the bar that Sloane acted. She let out a shrill scream, bringing her hand to her bare chest. "My God!" The conversation stopped. The classical background music stopped. Everyone looked. "What is it, Sloane?" Graham returned, glass in hand, concerned. "Your watch, the one from your grandfather. And my diamond ring. They're gone. I left them on the dresser in the master bedroom a little while ago, went to wash my hands, and when I came back, they were gone." Someone entered the bedroom. Sloane turned her body and pointed an accusing finger with her perfectly manicured nail directly at Willa's face, who was holding a tray of vol au vents. "It was her. I saw her coming out of the master bedroom corridor a little while ago with a suspicious look." Willa stopped in the middle of the living room. The blood froze in her veins. The tray trembled. "Sloane, I didn't enter the bedroom. I've been serving in the living room for an hour." Willa tried to defend herself, her voice fading away. "Liar!" Sloane shouted, putting on an innocent face worthy of an Oscar. "You are the only stranger here. I knew you had a bloodhound's nose. Graham, do something! Search her! Search this gold digger's bag right now! The watch must be in there!" The guests, embarrassed, looked at the floor or at their glasses. Graham was pale, motionless. "Sloane, calm down. We're not going to make a scene in front of the investors." "A scene? I was robbed in my own house. I demand that you bring her bag here right now. Mrs. Lorraine, bring this thief's bag." Mrs. Lorraine appeared in the kitchen doorway, livid, bringing Willa's battered and worn bag. She handed the bag to Graham with trembling hands, apologizing with her eyes. "Open up, Graham," Sloane ordered, her eyes shining with manic triumph. She was sure that Willa had picked up the watch from the floor and hidden it in her bag. Willa lifted her chin. She looked into Graham's eyes. "You can open it, sir. I have nothing to hide." Graham, visibly uncomfortable and embarrassed by the woman's attitude, unzipped the worn bag. He turned the contents out onto the imported glass coffee table. An old, peeling wallet fell out, a half-used cheap lipstick, a simple wooden rosary, and 3 reused plastic margarine containers, empty but stained with sauce. No watch, no ring. The silence in the living room was deafening. The only sound was the air conditioning. Sloane blinked, confused. The smile faltered. She stepped forward, rummaging through the empty containers with disgust, getting her fingers greasy. "But it has to be there. I know she took it. She must have hidden it on her body, in her bra. Search her, Graham. Take her clothes off if you need to." Graham closed his eyes for a second, taking a deep breath. When he opened them, the expression of a submissive husband had vanished. He reached into the inner pocket of his jacket and pulled out the gold Rolex. "Sloane, stop!" His voice was low, but sharp as a razor. Sloane looked at the watch in his hand. Her face lost all color, turning grey. "The watch. You found it? But I searched. I left it on the dresser. Willa found it," Graham said loud and clear, staring intently at his wife. "She found it this afternoon in the staff corridor and handed it to me in the study. Hours before you started this ridiculous show." The guests exchanged shocked glances, and murmurs began. Sloane opened her mouth and closed it, looking like a fish out of water. The lie had been unmasked, dissected, and exposed in front of the most important people for Graham's career. "Ah," Sloane tried to laugh, a nervous, high-pitched and hysterical laugh. "How wonderful! What a relief, my God! I must have gotten confused with the emotion. You know how distracted I can be, right, darling? And the ring must have fallen behind the bed. What a silly thing for me to do. She tried to hug Graham, but he took a subtle step back, noticeable to everyone. Apologize, Sloane. What? Apologize to Willa? Now. You called her a thief, a ghetto girl, and ordered her to be searched naked in front of my partners. Sloane turned red with rage. A vein throbbed in her forehead. Apologize to the maid. Never. But Graham's gaze was serious, dangerous. Sorry, Willa. She spat the words through clenched teeth, looking at the wall. It was a misunderstanding. Willa gathered her things from the table with dignity, putting the jars back in her bag. It's okay, ma'am. To err is human, but accusing without proof is a crime. Willa left the living room. Graham looked at Willa with a new and profound respect. But Sloane. The look Sloane shot at Willa's back was not one of defeat. It was total war. If the robbery plan failed, she would attack where it hurt the most. Survival. Dinner ended early and poorly. The atmosphere had soured irreversibly. The guests left murmuring about the emotional imbalance of Graham's wife. When the front door closed, Sloane exploded. She didn't yell at Graham. She ran to the coffee table where, in her haste, Willa had dropped one of the jars on the floor during her exit. You think she's a saint, don't you, Graham? Sloane hissed, her eyes bloodshot. Willa found the watch. Willa is honest. You're a blind fool. Enough, Sloane. You've crossed every line today. I'm ashamed. Oh, really? And what about this? Sloane picked up the plastic container from the floor. She ripped off the lid. Did you see what was in her bag? Empty containers. No, my dear, containers with a smell. Sloane shoved the container into Graham's face. Smell this. Graham frowned, pulling back. It smells like food, Sloane. So what? It smells like truffle oil, Graham, Sloane shouted, triumphant. From Thursday's risotto. Do you think the maid buys truffle oil in the ghetto? Do you think she eats Paris mushrooms in her cramped apartment? Willa, who was at the kitchen door waiting to clean the living room, stepped in. She couldn't let this go. It was the villain's final move. That proves nothing, Willa said, her voice trembling with indignation but firm. It proves that you steal food. Sloane advanced. You didn't steal the watch because you were scared, but you steal food every day. The grocery bill has doubled. Meats disappear. Fruits disappear. You are a gold digger. Graham looked at Willa, then at the pot. The smell was unmistakable. Doubt, that malignant seed, began to sprout again. If she didn't steal the watch, maybe she stole smaller things. Willa, Graham asked, his voice tired, did you take risotto from the house? Willa took a deep breath. The truth was ugly, but it was the truth. I didn't steal the risotto, Mr. Graham. Liar, the smell is right there. I scraped the pot, Willa shouted, interrupting Sloane. Silence fell in the living room. Willa continued, tears streaming down her face, but her voice was firm. On Thursday, the pots came back full of rice stuck to the bottom. Mrs. Lorraine was going to have them washed. I took the spoon and scraped the burnt part from the bottom before pouring water. What was going down the drain, I put in the pot. The rest of the rest, is that what you call stealing? Eating what you tell me to throw away? The revelation was a punch to Graham's stomach. He visualized the scene. The woman scraping the dirty pan to have something to eat, while they threw pounds of food in the trash. Sloane, however, had no soul to feel shame. A thief of leftovers is just as much a thief. If you scrape the pan, you steal my trash. The trash is mine. Shut up, Sloane! Graham's shout was so loud that the window panes vibrated. He never shouted. He was red, trembling with rage and shame. I can't believe what I'm hearing. You're fighting over scraps of food scraped from a pan, while you spend 10,000 on a dinner that no one ate. He walked to the center of the living room, looking from Sloane to Willa. I don't know what is true in this house anymore. I don't know who the crazy one is and who the thief is, but I'm going to find out, And it's going to be now. He took his phone out of his pocket and dialed a number, putting it on speaker. Hello, the company Protect Security? Yes, it's me, Graham. I want to request an urgent service for tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock. What are you going to do? Sloane asked, her voice faltering. I want the installation of surveillance cameras. Everywhere, Graham said on the phone, looking into Sloane's eyes. Kitchen, internal corridors, pantry, service area. I want to see even the dust falling to the ground. I want audio and video in high definition. Sloane paled. The colour drained from her lips. Willa felt a mix of relief and absolute terror. The cameras would prove that she wasn't stealing to take home. They would prove that Sloane was cruel, but the cameras would show her entering the forbidden corridor of the East Wing. The cameras would show her feeding Mr. Harrison. If Graham saw, would he forgive her for breaking the rule, or would he fire her? Graham hung up the phone. Recess is over, Sloane. Starting tomorrow, Big Brother is watching, and anyone who owes will pay. He climbed the stairs, leaving the two women staring at each other in the foyer. Sloane's gaze was pure panic. If the cameras came in, her father's secret in the East Wing would be discovered. She needed to act fast. Willa knew time was up. The Cold War was over. The massacre was about to begin. The shrill sound of the power drill tore through the sacred silence of Tuesday morning like a metallic scream. It was 7 o'clock sharp. Graham hadn't slept. He stood in the middle of the foyer, motionless like a statue, holding a mug of black coffee that was already cold. His eyes, red from insomnia, watched the technicians in blue overalls install the small devices in the ceiling, drilling through the delicate plaster of the mansion. Sloane rushed down the stairs, dressed only in a loosely tied silk robe, her eyes swollen and an expression of someone who had swallowed ground glass. "Graham! For God's sake!" she shouted, trying to be heard over the infernal noise of the drill. "Does it have to be this racket now? I have a migraine. Have you completely lost it?" Graham didn't even turn around. He continued to stare intently at the technician who was installing a discreet camera, camouflaged as a smoke detector, aimed directly at the kitchen door. "Security doesn't wait for your headache to pass, Sloane." His voice was monotone, emotionless, dead. "Didn't you say we are being robbed? That food disappears? That jewelry goes missing? Well then, now we will see the ghosts." Sloane looked at the device on the ceiling, blinking a red light intermittently. She swallowed hard, her hand instinctively going to her neck. "But does it have to be placed in here? Isn't the problem external? Aren't they outsiders? The problem is internal." Graham turned his body and pointed to the corridor that led to the staff quarters and, crucially, to the beginning of the staff corridor in the East Wing. "I had it installed everywhere. Corridors, pantry, living room, kitchen, only the bedrooms and bathrooms were left out by law. The rest is Big Brother, Sloane, 24 hours a day." Willa was wiping the baseboard near the stairs, trying to make herself scarce. She heard everything. Her heart was racing, almost coming out of her mouth. She discreetly looked up and saw the technician installing a wide-angle camera right at the entrance of the corridor that led to the forbidden door. That camera would catch everything. It would catch her coming in. It would catch her going out. It would catch her taking food. It was the end of the line. Willa exchanged a quick, terrified glance with Mrs. Lorraine, who was at the kitchen door, pale as wax. Mrs. Lorraine knew that if Willa fell, she would fall too for complicity. "Willa!" Graham's voice cut through the air, calling her. Willa jumped, dropping the wet cloth on the floor. "Yes, sir?" Graham walked over to her. He looked exhausted, shattered, but his eyes were alert, scanning her face for any sign of guilt or tremor. "The household routine continues as normal. I will be working from home today. I'll be in the study monitoring the system installation and testing the feeds. I want you to do exactly what you do every day. Clean, serve, cook. Don't change a thing. Understood? Yes, sir, Willa replied, lowering her eyes. If you are honest, Willa, you have nothing to fear. The cameras are friends of the truth, but they are deadly enemies of lies. He turned and went to the study, slamming the door shut. The sound echoed through the mansion. Sloane stood at the bottom of the stairs, trembling with rage. She looked at Willa. The hatred in her eyes was palpable, but there was something new there. Fear. Real, raw, panic. She descended the last step and brushed past Willa, bumping her shoulder aggressively. If you open your mouth, Sloane whispered, her warm breath in Willa's ear. If you pull any stunts for those cameras, I'll take you down before the video finishes recording. I'll put you in jail, got it? Sloane ran up the stairs, probably to call the supposed nurse and cancel any visit. That never existed, or to try to create a desperate alibi. Willa was left alone in the foyer, under the cold electronic gaze of the glass lens in the ceiling. She had an impossible choice: stop going to Mr. Harrison's bedroom and save her job, or risk everything and save the life of the man who depended on her. She looked at the wall clock. It was almost 11 o'clock. Mr. Harrison would be thirsty and hungry. Noon. Graham's study was dim, the curtains drawn, illuminated only by the bluish, ghostly glow of 3 high-definition monitors set up on the oak desk. The system was state-of-the-art, military-grade. He could see 9 angles of the mansion simultaneously. The image was crystal clear, colorful. The sound, captured by sensitive microphones, was perfect. Graham was sitting in the leather armchair, motionless. He had said he was going to work, but he hadn't opened a single email. His eyes jumped from one screen to another, obsessed, searching for the enemy within his own house. He saw Sloane in the master bedroom. The hallway camera caught the door she left open, pacing back and forth, talking nervously on her cell phone, biting her nails. The corridor microphone picked up fragments of her shrill voice. "No, not today. Graham is crazy. Don't come. Make up that the car broke down." Graham frowned. Who was she talking to? The nurse? Why cancel the nurse if his father needed urgent care? Then his eyes dropped to screen 4, the kitchen. Willa was there. It was staff lunchtime. Mrs. Lorraine had served Willa's plate, rice, beans, and a generous piece of stewed chicken. Graham zoomed in on the image. The resolution was impressive. He could see the smoke rising from the food. He saw Willa sit at the table. She looked at the clock on the wall. Then she glanced at the camera on the ceiling, a quick look, as if she knew she was being watched. Her behavior changed. She leaned over the plate, as if she was going to eat, but Graham noticed the tension in her shoulders. Willa turned her body in the chair, turning her back to the camera, blocking the direct view of the plate with her own torso. It seemed like she was just adjusting herself, but her hands moved quickly under the table and in front of her body. "What are you hiding, Willa?" Graham whispered to the screen, leaning closer. Around the edges of the image, Graham saw her elbows moving. She was cutting something. Then, a quick wrapping motion. And then, her hand stealthily slipped into the deep pocket of her apron. When she turned back to the table, the plate was emptier. Half of the chicken had disappeared. "Stealing food to take home," Graham murmured, feeling a pang of disappointment. Sloane was right. She saves the meat. But why so much secrecy over a piece of chicken? If she asked, he would give her the whole chicken. There was something strange about that need to hide. Graham continued watching, hypnotized. Willa quickly ate the rest of the rice and beans, washed the plate, dried her hands, and grabbed the bucket and broom. She left the kitchen. Graham shifted his gaze to screen 5, staff corridor. Willa walked slowly, her posture tense, looking around. She stopped in front of the cleaning closet, grabbed a clean cloth, and then, instead of going to the living room or the bedrooms to do her usual cleaning, she paused. She looked up at the ceiling, staring at the hallway camera for a second. There was an apology in that gaze, and she turned left to the east corridor, the forbidden wing. Graham's heart stopped for a second. The blood ran cold in his veins. "No," he whispered. "Don't go in there." He saw Willa walking down the dark, dusty corridor where the camera had night vision and made everything look green and grainy. She stopped in front of the solid oak door, the door of the monster. Graham leaned forward in his chair, the knuckles of his fingers white as he gripped the arm of the armchair. "Don't go in there, Willa. He will hurt you. Sloane said he bites. Get out of there now." But Willa didn't leave. Graham saw with terrifying clarity Willa standing on her tiptoes. She stretched her arm and felt along the top of the doorframe, high up where the dust had accumulated. Her hand came down, holding something metallic, a key, a hidden key. Graham felt a metallic taste of bile in his mouth. Sloane had sworn that the key was kept in a digital safe, accessible only to the head nurse and her. Why the hell was the key to his father's cell lying on the doorframe within reach of anyone? Willa unlocked the door. The movement was quick. She entered, taking the key with her, and closed the door behind her. Graham stared at the closed door on the green screen. Time stopped. The silence in the study was deafening. A minute passed. 2 minutes. No scream, no sound of struggle, no sign of violence. "What is she doing in there?" Graham asked the void. The distrust turned into pure panic. What if she was mistreating her father? What if she was complicit with the nurse in the abuses? Or what if she was stealing something that was inside, some forgotten family jewel? Graham needed to know. He could no longer just watch. He moved the mouse with a trembling hand and clicked on the audio icon of Camera 7, East Corridor. The installed microphone was highly sensitive, capable of picking up whispers, and the old wooden door had wide gaps underneath. He turned the volume up to the maximum. The static crackle from the speakers filled the study for a few seconds, sounding like rain. Graham held his breath, his body rigid, waiting to hear the growl of his demented father, the sound of breaking glass, or Willa's voice screaming for help. But what came out of the speakers was something that made Graham's world spin off its axis. It was a voice, sweet, low, melodic, faintly echoing through the empty corridor. Willa's voice. "Rosemary, golden rosemary, that was born in the field without being sown." Graham blinked, confused. She was singing a children's song to a violent monster. "It was my love. Who told me this way, that the flower of the field is rosemary?" And then a second voice emerged, blending with hers. A voice that Graham had not heard in 3 years. A weak, trembling voice, scratched from lack of use and dryness, but unmistakably human, unmistakably his. "It was my love who told me this way." Graham brought his hand to his mouth, stifling a sob that rose, tearing at his throat. It was his father, singing, not shouting, not cursing, not biting, singing. "Very good, Mr. Harrison." Willa's voice sounded cheerful, affectionate, muffled through the wood. "You remembered the whole lyrics today. Mrs. Lorraine would be so proud." "Lorraine," the old man's voice trembled, full of longing. "She was beautiful, right, Willa? She smelled like rain." "Yes, Mr. Harrison. Graham has her eyes, doesn't he?" "He does. My boy. He has eyes the color of the sky." "But he isn't coming, Willa. He forgot about me. He left me in the dark." "He didn't forget, Mr. Harrison." Willa's voice became choked, tearful. He's lost. He's blind. But he will find his way back, I promise. The witch says he hates me." "The witch is lying. Now open your mouth. Here comes the airplane. Vrum. It's chicken, Mr. Harrison. Tender chicken, just the way you like it." There was a silence in the audio, followed only by sounds of slow, greedy chewing and low moans of pleasure while eating. Good. Real food. The witch doesn't give this. She only gives dirty water." "Shh. Don't talk about the witch. Eat everything to get strong. When Graham comes, you have to be strong to hug him." "I will be. I will get strong for my boy." In the study, Graham was paralyzed. Tears streamed down his face uncontrollably, soaking the collar of his starched shirt. He trembled from head to toe. Every word that came from that speaker was a stab to the chest. The witch, she forgot about me, real food, dirty water. He looked at the screen. The door remained closed, but the audio painted a picture that shattered blow by blow all the reality that Sloane had built in his mind over the past years. There was no monster. There was no aggressive dementia. There were no specialized nurses. There was a hungry old man, abandoned, locked in the dark, being fed scraps hidden in the pocket by the maid he almost fired for stealing food. Graham felt a physical pain in his chest, as if his heart were being crushed by a giant hand. It was a mix of overwhelming guilt, unbearable shame, and pure hatred. Hatred for himself for being blind. Hatred for Sloane for being the devil. He heard Willa again. "Ready, full belly. Now let's clean that face. You are a gentleman. You can't get dirty with sauce. Willa, are you my guardian angel?" "I'm just the maid, Mr. Harrison." "No. You are my family, the only one left." Graham slammed his fist on the table with all his strength. Boom! The crash made the monitors shake and a pen roll to the floor. The only one left. "No! No more!" Graham got up from the chair. He didn't turn off the monitors. He didn't wipe away the tears. He left the study like a possessed man, stumbling over his own feet in urgency. He didn't need to see it on the screen anymore. He needed to touch the truth. He needed to ask for forgiveness. Graham crossed the foyer of the mansion. His steps were heavy, echoing on the marble. He wasn't running but walking with the lethal determination of someone going to the gallows or to war. In the living room, Sloane was sitting on the velvet sofa with the laptop on her lap and a glass of wine in her hand, pretending to be normal. She smiled nervously when she saw Graham come out of the study, trying to read his expression. "Honey, are you done with work?" She tried to sound casual, her voice too high-pitched. "I was looking at some wines to restock the cellar. That 2015 vintage you like is on sale." Graham walked past her without turning his head. He didn't slow down. He didn't see her. Sloane, to him in that moment, was a ghost, an annoying static on the screen of his life. "Graham?" Her voice faltered, the smile fading. "Where are you going with that face?" "Graham." He kept walking. Passed through the dining room, entered the kitchen. Mrs. Lorraine was at the sink washing dishes. When she saw the expression on Graham's face, his red, swollen eyes, clenched jaw, bulging neck veins, she dropped a porcelain plate. The plate shattered on the floor, but Graham didn't stop. He didn't even blink. He entered the staff corridor. The air there felt colder, the smell of cheap cleaning products mixed with the old damp scent of the house. Sloane came running after him, her heels desperately clicking on the floor. She realized where he was going. "Graham, you can't go in there. Graham, stop!" she shouted, her voice rising an octave, bordering on total hysteria. "The nurse called me. She said he's in a violent crisis today. It's dangerous. You will get hurt. He has a knife." Graham stopped at the entrance of the east wing. He slowly turned to Sloane. His gaze made Sloane stop abruptly, 3 meters away, skidding on the floor. There was no anger in Graham's gaze. There was death. There was the end of everything. It was the gaze of a stranger. "You said he bites," Graham said, his voice low, hoarse, almost a whisper. "And he bites. He is an animal. Graham, please, let's go back to the living room. I'll give you a massage. You're stressed." "You said he screams, that he howls like a beast. He screams. Every day. Funny." Graham turned his back to her and looked at the oak door at the end of the staff corridor. "I only heard him sing." Sloane froze. The color drained from her face as if it had been sucked out by a syringe. Her legs gave way and she had to lean against the wall. "What?" she whispered, terror taking over. You heard?" Graham didn't answer. He continued walking. Each step toward that door was a step away from the life of lies he had with Sloane. "Graham, no!" Sloane tried to move forward, grabbing his arm in a last act of desperation. Graham violently shook his arm, throwing Sloane against the opposite wall without even touching her, just with the brute force of the repulsive gesture. "Don't you dare!" he growled, baring his teeth. "Don't you dare take another step toward me." Sloane leaned against the wall, trembling, crying tears of fear, watching her husband walk away. She knew. The game was over. The jig was up. Graham stopped in front of the oak door. His gaze instinctively rose to the top of the doorframe where the camera had shown Willa taking the key. There was nothing there. The dust was marked by her fingers, but the key had vanished. This confirmed everything. She was inside, locked in with him. Graham pressed his ear against the wood. He heard low laughter, weak old laughter, interrupted by dry coughs, and Willa's voice telling some story about the traffic in the city, something trivial every day, that for that prisoner must have sounded like an epic adventure. So the bus broke down right on the avenue, and everyone had to get off in the rain. Willa's voice came from inside, muffled but clear. "And did you get your foot wet, little angel?" "Mr." Harrison's voice filled with genuine concern. "I did, Mr. Harrison. I soaked my whole sock. I had a cold foot all day." "Poor thing. Take my blanket. You can have it. I don't feel cold." Graham closed his eyes, feeling the warm tears return. His father, who had nothing, who lived in filth, offering the only non-existent blanket to warm the feet of the maid. A wave of shame washed over Graham, so strong that he almost vomited. He pressed his forehead against the cold wood of the door and cried, a silent cry with shaking shoulders from someone who realizes he has lost years irretrievably. Behind him, at the beginning of the staff corridor, Sloane watched, paralyzed by the terror of the imminent discovery. Mrs. Lorraine appeared behind Sloane, covering her mouth with her hands, crying as well. Graham took a deep breath, trying to pull air into his lungs that felt like they were collapsing. He wiped his wet face with the sleeve of his shirt. He needed to be strong. He needed to be a man. He needed to be a son. He tried to turn the doorknob. Locked. Of course. Willa was protecting herself. He knocked on the door. 3 soft knocks. "Willa!" he called. His voice faltered, came out broken. "Willa, open the door!" The silence inside was instant and absolute. The laughter stopped. The story stopped. Graham heard the sound of something falling to the floor, perhaps the plastic saucer, and quick, light footsteps coming to the door, and the breathless, terrified breathing of Willa on the other side. "Is that you, Graham?" Her voice was a thread of pure fear. Are you there? Open up, Willa, it's me, please." There was a pause, an eternity of 3 seconds where the fate of everyone in that mansion hung in the balance. Graham heard his father's voice deep down, trembling, full of hope and fear. "Is it the boy? Is it my boy? Willa? Did he come?" Willa replied, her voice choked with tears. "It's him, Mr. Harrison. It's him. The angel brought him." The sound of the key turning in the lock was the loudest sound in the world in that silent corridor. Click, clack. The latch gave way. Graham placed his sweaty palm on the wood. He pushed. The door creaked, slowly opening to reveal the darkness of the bedroom, broken only by the dusty beam of light that Willa had opened at the window and by the light from the corridor that now flooded the room, illuminating the hidden misery. Graham took the first step into the abyss, and what he saw there would change his life forever. The door opened completely, the dry hinges groaning like an ancient lament that had been stuck in the throat of that house for years. The bright, strong light from the corridor flooded the bedroom, for the first time in a long time, cutting through the thick gloom like a sharp blade. Graham stopped at the threshold, unable to take another step. The smell hit him first, even before his eyes could focus. It was not the scent of imported lavender that Sloane spread throughout the main rooms. It was the sour, heavy smell of neglect, mixed with the sweet, sad odor of mold and forgotten humanity. His eyes, accustomed to the brightness of the staff corridor, took a torturous second to adjust to the darkness of that captivity. And then he saw. He saw the rusty bed without worthy sheets. He saw the wooden boards nailed to the window, blocking the sun. He saw the plastic pots on the floor with scraps of scraped food. And he saw Willa. She was sitting on the edge of the filthy mattress, her body hunched forward in an instinctive, protective posture, almost animalistic. One of her arms wrapped around the shoulders of the thin old man, pulling him against her, like a wing covering an injured chick from a predator. Mr. Harrison blinked, dazzled by the sudden light that hurt his dilated pupils. He trembled violently, shrinking even more against Willa's chest. "The witch," he whispered, his voice broken by absolute terror. "She's back. Did she bring the rod?" Graham felt his legs give out, as if his bones had turned to water. He took a trembling step inside, the Italian leather shoe hitting the dirty, beaten cement floor. "No, Father." Graham's voice came out ragged, a strangled sound that seemed to come from a scared child, not a grown man. "It's not the witch." Mr. Harrison stopped shaking for a moment. He slowly lifted his head, his fragile neck supporting the weight of years of neglect. His blue eyes, clouded by cataracts and held-back tears, searched for the source of that voice in the silhouette illuminated against the door. He squinted, trying to focus. That voice. The old man furrowed his brow, confused. Graham. Graham fell to his knees. The impact was dry, painful, but he felt nothing. He didn't care about the dirt on the floor, didn't care about the expensive suit. He crawled the last few meters to the bed, openly crying, a cry that washed his soul. "It's me, Father, it's me!" Mr. Harrison stretched a skeletal hand into the air, groping at nothingness. His fingers trembled. Graham took his father's hand and brought it to his face, kissing the dirty palm, pressing his wet cheek against the cold, thin skin like tissue paper. "My boy." Mr. Harrison smiled, a toothless and radiant smile that lit up the darkness of that bedroom more than any lamp. "You've grown. You took your time, son." Was the traffic bad? The innocence of the question was like a physical stab to Graham's heart. The pain was so sharp that he had to close his eyes. His father didn't blame him. His father thought he was just late. "It was, Dad," Graham sobbed, pressing his hand against his chest where his heart was beating irregularly. "The traffic was horrible. I got lost on the way, Dad. I got lost a lot. But I made it. Forgive me. Forgive me for taking so long. It's all right. You arrived." The old man stroked Graham's hair tenderly, his trembling fingers running through his son's grey strands. "Willa took care of me while you weren't coming. She gave me eggs. Do you like eggs, Graham?" Graham lifted his face and looked at Willa. She was silently crying, the tears washing her tired face. She tried to step back a little to give space for the sacred reunion, but Mr. Harrison held her hand with his other hand, with surprising strength, refusing to let go of her. "I like them, Dad," Graham replied, his voice choked. "I like them a lot." The initial emotion of the reunion began to give way to a brutal and icy shock of reality. Now that he was close, just inches away, Graham could see the details that the security camera did not show. The smell, the texture, the raw and naked truth. He saw the dirt embedded under his father's nails, nails that hadn't been cut in weeks. He saw the extreme thinness, the collarbones jutting out like hangers beneath the transparent skin, the ribs marked with each difficult breath, and he saw something on his wrists. Graham held his father's arm with extreme delicacy, afraid of breaking it, and pulled up the sleeve of the torn and stained shirt. The air vanished from Graham's lungs. The skin on the wrists was like an open wound. There was a collection of scars, some old, white and hard, others new, red, inflamed, and with scabs of dried blood. They were circular, deep marks, marks of someone who had been tightly bound and desperately tried to break free. "What is this?" Graham asked, his voice shifting from crying to a volcanic fury that began to burn in his stomach. "Who did this to you, father?" Mr. Harrison instinctively recoiled his arm, embarrassed, hiding the marks like a child who had made a mess. "It's so I don't run away, son. The witch said I'm bad, that I break things in the beautiful house. She ties me up tight. It hurts at night when I want to turn in bed." Graham looked at the iron bed's headboard. He saw the thick leather straps still hanging there, heavy metal buckles worn from use. They were restraint straps, like those used in old asylums. He looked at Willa, seeking confirmation, praying it was a mistake. "Did they tie him up?" Graham asked, his voice fading. Willa nodded, wiping her face with the back of her hands. "Every day, Mr. Graham. Mrs. Lorraine told me it was an express order from Mrs. Sloane. They said he hit himself, that he scratched himself, but I never saw him hit himself. He just tried to reach the water they left far away. He hurt himself trying to live." Graham stood up. The movement was slow, heavy with weight. He looked at his father, lying in that filth, covered by a sheet that smelled of old urine. He looked at the plastic plate on the floor, with scraps of stolen food scraped from the pot. The guilt he felt solidified. It turned into a suit of armor. He took off his own cold wool jacket. With infinite care, he wrapped it around his father's thin shoulders, covering the shame of that torn shirt. "Never again," Graham said, his voice firm, looking deep into his father's eyes. "No one will ever lay a finger on you again. No one will ever lock you up or tie you down. I swear." "The witch will fight," his father whispered, his eyes wide with conditioned fear. "She screams loud. The witch doesn't rule here anymore. The witch is dead to us." Graham kissed his father's sweaty forehead. Then he turned to Willa. "Willa?" "Yes, sir." "Stay with him. Don't leave his side for a second. Lock the door from the inside if you need to, but don't let anyone in except me or the doctors. I'm going downstairs, and when I come back, this house will be different." Willa saw the expression on Graham's face. He was no longer the tired and indifferent boss. He was a man possessed by justice. "You can count on me, sir. I will protect him with my life." Graham turned and walked to the door. He didn't look back. He had a reckoning to settle, and it would be final. Graham descended the corridor like a silent storm. His steps were heavy, determined, echoing the death sentence of a marriage. Mrs. Lorraine, who was huddled in the corner of the corridor crying in remorse, shrank even further as he passed. "Mrs. Lorraine." Graham stopped without looking at her. "Yes, Mr. Graham. Forgive me, I was scared. Shut up. I don't want your excuses right now. Call a private ambulance, the best in town. Say it's a geriatric emergency, and call the police." "Yes, sir." Mrs. Lorraine ran to the phone, trembling. Graham entered the living room. Sloane was there. She hadn't run away. Her arrogance was so great, or perhaps her denial was so deep, that she still thought she could manipulate the situation. She was standing near the fireplace, holding the wine glass with both hands to hide the uncontrollable shaking of her fingers. When she saw Graham enter, she tried to smile. It was a grotesque, trembling smile, a mask falling apart. "Darling, you look pale, sweaty. Can we talk calmly? I can explain everything. Your father, he has phases, you know? It's clinical. Sometimes he gets calm and sings. He seems like an angel, but then he turns into a dangerous beast. I just wanted to spare you from seeing this. I did it out of love." Graham did not stop walking until he was a hand's breadth from her face. He emanated a heat of fury so intense that Sloane instinctively recoiled, hitting her back against the cold wall. Graham did not shout. He spoke in a low, guttural, terrible tone. "I saw his wrists, Sloane." Sloane opened her mouth to lie, but no sound came out. The truth in Graham's eyes silenced her. I saw the marks of the restraints. I saw the thinness of someone who is starving. I saw the fear in his eye when he heard your name. He asked if the witch had brought the rod. Graham, it was for his safety. He hurts himself. She tried, her voice faltering, false tears beginning to well up. Safety? Graham laughed, a dry and frightening sound, with no humor at all. You turned my father into a caged animal. You diverted the nurse's money to buy bags and shoes. You let him rot in his own filth while you bought $5,000 wines. Graham took the wineglass from her hand. In a quick and violent motion, he hurled it against the opposite wall. The crystal exploded, shattering, and the wine stained the beige wallpaper with a dark red liquid resembling blood. Sloane screamed, covering her face with her hands, shrinking back. You are a monster, Sloane, Graham continued, relentless. You are worse than an animal. An animal kills to eat. You tortured my father out of whim, out of laziness, out of pure malice. I am your wife, Sloane shouted, trying to regain control, appealing to the status she was losing. Are you going to believe the word of the maid? That filthy slum dweller. I did everything for us, so we wouldn't have to deal with the drool and the diaper of that useless old man who only brings expenses. The silence that followed the word useless was heavy, dense. Graham looked at her with absolute disgust. He took his phone out of his pocket. The police are on their way, and the ambulance too. Abuse of a vulnerable person, false imprisonment, embezzlement, fraud. They will make sure you lose everything. Your name, your money, your freedom. You will leave here in handcuffs. Sloane Caldwell's eyes widened. Reality finally pierced her bubble of narcissism. This was not a couple's fight that would end with a duel of apologies. It was the end of her life. Graham, no, please, think of the press. It will destroy your reputation. The scandal. I can rebuild my reputation with the truth. Yours ends today. He pointed to the front door, which Mrs. Lorraine had just opened. Mrs. Lorraine held the door open, not as a servant, but as someone opening the cell for the prisoner to leave. She looked at Sloane Caldwell with disdain. Get out! What? Get out of my house now, before the police arrive. If they find you here, I won't be responsible for myself. But my clothes, my jewelry, my cards, none of this is yours. Graham stepped forward, physically intimidating her. Everything here was bought with my money. With the money you stole from my father's dignity, you leave with the clothes on your back, and if I were you, I would run. Sloane looked at Graham. She looked at Mrs. Lorraine. She looked at the luxurious mansion she thought she owned. She tried to maintain a semblance of composure. She lifted her trembling chin, adjusting the wine-stained silk robe. You will regret it, Graham. You are nothing without me. You will be left alone with that old fool and that dirty little maid. You deserve each other. She walked to the door, her heels hitting the floor like a failing hammer. But before she could leave, Graham delivered the final blow. Sloane. She stopped in the doorway, turning with a glimmer of hope. Give back the ring. Sloane looked at the diamond engagement ring on her ring finger, the symbol of everything she wanted. She tried to pull it off, but her finger was swollen from heat and tension. She had to force it, scratching her skin. She took off the ring and threw it on the floor at Graham's feet. The diamond hit the wood and rolled away. Keep this garbage. She stepped out into the hot street, slamming the door. Graham stood there, breathing heavily, his chest rising and falling. He looked at the ring shining on the floor. He didn't pick it up. He kicked it under the sofa, as if it were trash. He looked at the stairs. The 3-year nightmare was over. Now, the long road to healing began. 3 months later, the morning sun streamed through the living room windows, which were now wide open. There were no more heavy curtains blocking the light and hiding secrets. The mansion, once a cold mausoleum, now smelled of cornbread, fresh coffee, and flowers picked from the garden. Outside, under the generous shade of a blooming yellow ipe tree, an elderly man was sitting in a modern and comfortable wheelchair. Mr. Harrison was another person. He no longer looked like the skeletal prisoner from the East Wing. He had gained weight, his cheeks were rosy with health, his white hair was cut short and neatly styled, shining in the sun. He wore a clean blue polo shirt and comfortable linen pants. Next to him, sitting on a rustic wooden bench, Graham was reading the Sunday newspaper aloud to his father. And the company's stock rose 10% this week, regaining market confidence. See, Dad, we're doing well. The storm has passed. Good. Good. Mr. Harrison smiled, distracted, watching two little birds fighting over a crumb. And the plane, Graham? The plane is in the hangar, Dad. Next Sunday we'll go see it take off, okay? The doctor cleared the outing. Okay. With Willa? Graham smiled, calmly folding the newspaper. Of course, Dad. Without Willa, we won't get anywhere. The plane doesn't fly without the pilot. At that moment, Willa appeared on the porch carrying a tray with a pitcher of cold orange juice. She was no longer wearing the grey and sad maid uniform. She wore a light floral dress, simple yet beautiful, that accentuated her youth, comfortable flats on her feet. Her hair was down, falling over her shoulders, shiny and vibrant. She looked younger, lighter, as if she had taken a ton off her back. "The supplies have arrived," she announced, smiling, her voice echoing in the garden. Mr. Harrison clapped his hands, happy as a child. "Juice. Willa made juice. It's the sweet orange one." Willa lovingly served Mr. Harrison's glass, holding the glass for him to drink, and then wiping the corner of his mouth with an embroidered cloth napkin, not paper. Graham observed the scene in silence. The natural way she touched his father, with respect and genuine love, without disgust, without obligation. The way the sunlight hit her face, illuminating her brown eyes. He stood up and went to her. "Let me help you with the tray." He took the heavy tray from her hand and placed it on the side table. Willa smiled shyly, lowering her eyes for a second. The dynamic between them had changed drastically, but there was still a respectful hesitation, a new territory being explored. The doctor called. Graham said softly, just for her to hear, while his father distracted himself with the juice. He said that his blood tests are great. The anemia has completely disappeared. He said it was a miracle that the recovery was so quick. Willa looked at Mr. Harrison, who was trying to whistle to a little bird. "It wasn't a miracle, Graham. It was care. He just needed to know that someone cared. Loneliness kills more than hunger." Graham looked into Willa's eyes. They were deep, honest eyes. The eyes that saved him from his own blindness. "Willa," he began, taking something out of his pants pocket. It wasn't a ring. It was a key. A golden key, new, with a red ribbon. Willa frowned, curious. "What is this? The key to the pantry?" Graham laughed, shaking his head. "No, I had all the locks taken off this house. There are no more closed doors here." He took her hand, rough from years of work, and placed the key in her palm, closing her fingers around the metal. "This is the key to the guest house, that little stone house at the back of the garden, the one we renovated in the last few weeks." "The guest house? But for what? I know you still live in that cramped apartment downtown, Willa. I know you take 2 packed buses every day to come take care of my father. I don't want that anymore. I don't want you to leave at the end of the day." "Graham, I can't accept—" "It's too much. I'm an employee. It's not a gift, Willa. It's justice." He held her hands between his firmly. "You gave my father back his life. You returned my humanity to me. You are the housekeeper of this mansion now, officially. Mrs. Lorraine will take care of the heavy cleaning. You take care of us. But I wanted you to be more than that." Willa felt her heart race, her face growing warm. "More? I wanted you to be part of the family. For real." Graham blushed, looking like a shy boy far from the CEO demeanor. "I know it's early. I know I was a terrible boss, blind and neglectful, but I'm learning to see. And what I see every day is that this mansion only has light when you are in it. I don't want the light to go away. Mr. Harrison, who seemed distracted by the birds, abruptly turned his wheelchair toward them. "Kiss her already, boy!" he shouted, laughing and slapping his leg. "Stop being slow. Eleanor would have already kissed. You inherited your grandfather's slowness." Willa and Graham laughed, surprised, the tension breaking into joy. "Dad sent me," Graham said, a mischievous smile appearing on his lips. "And you know, in this house, now he is the one in charge. I just obey." Willa looked at Graham. For the first time, she did not see the unreachable millionaire. She saw the man who cried at the door of a dirty bedroom. She saw the man who defended his honor against his own wife. She saw a good man. "Well, if the boss sent me," she joked, her eyes shining with emotion, "who am I to disobey?" Graham leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull back if she wanted. She did not pull back. He kissed her. It was a gentle, sweet kiss under the warm sunlight and the approving gaze of a rescued old father. It was not a perfect fairy tale kiss. It was a kiss of reality, of two broken people who fixed each other. And so the mansion that was once a castle of horrors and silence now vibrated with laughter, hope, and the promise of a new life under the blue sky of a new day. Did you enjoy this story of overcoming? Do you think Sloane got the ending she deserved, or should she have gone to jail? And Graham, did he deserve forgiveness? Let me know in the comments. Until the next story.